To this now, government is putting children at risk. Section 27 says this is because it's not maintaining and implementing the Child Protection Register. It's now dragging several government departments to court. It argues delays in updating the register allows predators to slip through the cracks. Yeah, and this is a very concerning story that we are watching out this morning for. We want to be speaking to Section 27 because every South African parent who sends a child to school or to a creche makes an assumption that the child is safe. But if there are cracks in the implementation or enforcement of the Child Protection Register, it means the risk is very high. Children remain vulnerable for predators to prey on them. Let's bring in now and speak to the Section 27's Tendai Mafuma, the researcher. The Tendai, good morning. For viewers who may not know much about the National Child Protection Register, why is this case so significant?
Good morning, Dan, and thank you for having me on the show. Like you said, this case is really important. The National Child Protection Register is set up in terms of the Children's Act. And the purpose of that register, it has two parts. And what we are concerned about in this case is Part B of the register, which is the part of the register where if someone has been found to be unsuitable to work with children, their name is entered onto that register. And ideally what should happen is when, for example, the Department of Education is hiring educators or early childhood development centers are hiring their staff, they should be able to vet whoever they're trying to hire against that register and make sure that their names that do not appear on that register. Because if their names do appear on the register, those people should not be working with children. And what we've found is a failure from, in this example, a failure from the Department of Education first to vet when they are hiring people and also to make sure that, for example, if they have a disciplinary proceeding against someone and they have adverse findings, to make sure that they send those names to the DSD for inclusion on the register. So we have a complete register against which we are vetting people.
Okay, your court papers suggest this isn't the failure of one department. For example, you've mentioned DSD, which is Department of Social Development. You've also mentioned the Basic Education Department, but you say it's a failure of an entire system. Where is the biggest breakdown occurring in the enforcement of this very important register?
Absolutely, it's a failure of an entire system. And the reason for that is that the Child Protection Register, the way it is established by the Act, requires various departments to work together. So, for example, the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development also has a role in the sense that if there's court proceedings and someone is found guilty of, for example, sexual assault against a child, their name should be, the registrar of court should then send the name to DSD for inclusion on the register. Department of Basic Education has similar responsibilities. Department of Social Development has the main responsibilities. It is a custodian of the register, and they're supposed to make sure that they maintain it and they update it and make sure that other stakeholders are sending the information that is required. And because everyone has a responsibility, we've seen that everyone has had a failure at some point in their obligations. And we're really concerned about that because the failure of one department, regardless of how well the others are doing, still results in an incomplete register. And that is where the...
Yeah, isn't the problem that there's too many departments who are supposed to do different parts of enforcing this? Don't you think, I'm just getting you want to get your sense as Section 27, that accountability must sit with one person, then you know how to enforce things? Because currently, if it's the custodian, is the Department of Social Development, but basic education must play its part, provincial departments must play a part. It's like nobody knows who's really actually responsible for enforcing it. Don't you think there should be a change there?
I do not think there should be a change because the Act is quite specific about what the responsibilities are. So whilst the departments may be responsible for sending people's names and vetting, the actual responsibility finally of maintaining the register rests with the DSD. The Act is very clear about that.
Okay.
And that cooperation from other departments. It is just that if one department fails, so for the register to be updated, names need to be forwarded. And if there's no forwarding, we don't have a complete register. And that is how sexual predators then are able to move from one school to the other and still continue to those children because their names are not being included. So when you're vetting against something that is incomplete.
So the schools as well, if there's been a reported case of a rape, for example, of a learner, they have to make sure they report it properly, get the name registered. I understand that. Final question to you. I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the Department of Basic Education and others involved are proposing a settlement. Is that the case? And if so, does it mean they acknowledge that they are failing?
Yes, so we were actually in court yesterday in the Pretoria High Court, and the Department of Basic Education and the Provincial Departments of Education have entered into a settlement agreement, basically acknowledging their obligations and some of the failures, and saying this is what we commit to doing over the next year. So they've committed to vet all the educators that are in the system by the end of March 2027. Currently, there are about 400,000 educators in the public schools, but only about 10%, 14,000 educators have been vetted. So what the department has said, going forward, educators who are already on the system are going to be vetted against the register, and also any new educators that are entering the system will be vetted. So that is a commitment that the Department of Education has made.
Okay, that sounds like some progress somehow, but we'll have to keep track of it. We'll try and speak to the Basic Education Department on this very important matter, because this country, how we treat our children is a huge disgrace. It's a national crisis. Thank you very much. Tendai Mafuma, Senior Legal Researcher at Section 27.